தினம்தோறும் விளக்கேற்ற நல்ல எண்ணெய் இதயம் நல்லெண்ணெய்.
Welcome back to the second session. I hope you all had your tea, coffee, and biscuits. We are moving on to a very interesting session on the Chennai Lit Fest program. To know about this program, to know about what is coming up, let's know a little about historical information about the city of Chennai. There are quite a good number of good stories and information that are spread across the history of this land. And one such information is that this is the very land in which Valmiki did his tapasya and set up his ashrama. That Valmiki's Ur is a place, is called Thiru Valmiki Ur, which is now called Thiruvanmiyur. Such is the beauty of this land. And it is also believed that it is the same ashrama that Valmiki had in the city of Chennai, is where Lav Kush had their schooling, their education. So why do we talk about Ramayana, Valmiki? There is quite yet another interesting information about Ramayana here. I did mention about Wu-Ve Swaminatha Iyer, who collected all the palm scripts and brought it into the printed edition of books. When he took the arduous task of printing Kamba Ramayana, genuinely it was an arduous task, beautiful stories in Ramayana. And the beauty of this land is that everybody has their version. Every little town tries to attach themselves with Ramayana and Mahabharata to Rama and Krishna, some story or other that this is the place where this happened. This is the place that this happened. Having said that, Ramayana and Mahabharata in itself houses a lot of stories, giving us room for a lot of imagination. To tell us about these stories, we have two eminent authors with us here. Ms. Ami Ganatra, an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad, who is a yoga practitioner, a student of Sanskrit and Indian knowledge, who is an author, who writes on fictions based on scriptures, the Mahabharata Unraveled and Ramayana Unraveled, where she has the two most popular books brought out by her, where the most important stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata has been compiled. May we request you to come on to the dais, please. And in conversation with her, we have an eminent author, Sri Abhinav Agarwal from IIT Bombay. He's a co-founder of Crossbeats. He's a co-founder and CEO of SwiftLearn. And he has brought in his book, Vyasa's Mahabharata, which travels around the 67 Upakathas and in detail writes about all these Upakathas from Mahabharata. His another book, Predator and Prey, is also very popular. Writing the fiction is based on the true stories from the scripture is really a challenge. And we have the honor and privilege of having Sri Abhinav Agarwal with us. May we request you to join us on the dais. And with them in conversation is Sri Surya Sarathi Roy, who will be a moderator to converse with Abhinav Agarwal and Sri Ms. Ami Ganatra. May I request Sri Surya Sarathi Roy to join us on the dais? And over to you, and we are all ears to listen to the stories from the scriptures.
So, Suprabhatam and Sadar Pranam to all in this audience. And what a enlightening session we had in the morning today by Nandakumar sir. So much of it is covered for Akhand Bharat. So I'm a cultural heritage person. I work with Intac and ICOMOS and, cultural heritage, which we know is very little actually. And let me quickly take 3-4 minutes to explain you what cultural heritage is all about. It comprises of many elements: the built heritage, the manuscripts, the coins, the natural heritage, the temples, forts, or even the skill sets of the artists or the skill sets of the dancers. Basically, tangible and intangible heritage, both. Now, we are talking of Akhanda Bharat, and before we moving on to the scriptures and fictions, let me give you a little bit of insight into the impact of scriptures on cultural heritage from a different mindset, from an archaeologist's mindset, because my area is primarily archaeology and epigraphy. So, in the early 1980s and early 1990s, when Professor Emeritus Dr. S.R. Rao, the father of marine archaeology in India, started working on the excavation of Dwarka. He primarily started, and why I'm sharing this, you will understand now. He primarily started working on the excavation based on 4 of our scriptures. The Harivamsha, he referred to the Vishnu Parva of Harivamsha. Then, of course, Mahabharata, where he referred to the Sabha Parva and the Morsal Parva. Then he referred Vishnu Puran and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why he did that? Because he wanted to narrow down on the exact locations before to start the excavations. So obviously he tried to identify the Mula Dwarka, the Bet Dwarka, and the shoreline of Bet Dwarka. And I don't know if anybody has gone through his works or not. It is one of my research areas, so I'll tell you 2 things from there. One, his final works, he mentioned that only Krishna's Dwarka, the tagline is missing. And why he said that, when you look at his works and findings, the archaeological findings, and I've been fortunate to visit some of the archaeological findings of Dr. Rao. And, I want to share with all of you, if any of you ever visit Kurukshetra, please go and visit the Sri Krishna Panorama Museum. You have 4,000-year-old stone anchors, triangle-shaped stone anchors recovered by Dr. Rao from the Dwarka excavations, kept in that museum. And you should see it. 3000 BC, 3500 BC stone anchors. So coming back to the findings, why he said that? Because, what he discovered, the excavations, during the excavation, the walls, Dwarka means a walled city. It was built from the 12 yojan of reclaimed land, which was earlier known as Kusasthali. So the walls of Dwarka findings, the archaeological findings, exactly matched with the descriptions mentioned in Harivamsha and Mahabharata, the mechanized walls. Then he also found Harappan seals, which had animals imprinted on them. And these seals not only were found in Dwarka and Lothal, but right up to Kalinga. And that takes us to the maritime trade, which is also one of our cultural heritage. Maritime trade of Kalinga, maritime trade of the Cholas, and maritime trade on the western sector in Dwarka and Lothal, which were the key port cities. So these coins and the walled cities convey a lot of impact even today on archaeological excavations that are being carried out. They are one of the key reference points, is what I'm trying to say. It's just not about from a religious perspective, but even from an archaeological perspective as well. A similar methodology was adopted by Dr. B.B. Lal when he excavated the mounds of Hastinapur, Varnavrat, and Draupadi Mound in Meerut area. Coming back to the the Kalingan trade, which I was referring to, Kautilya's Arthashastra, I'm just trying to address it from an Akhanda Bharat perspective. Kautilya's Arthashastra clearly defines for the Mauryas, of course, he wrote it for Chandragupta Maurya, but it clearly defines that what should be the process, policies, do's and don'ts, the golden rules of a maritime trade and maritime operations. And that is why the Mauryans had a complete monopoly in the eastern sector as long as they were there. And in that, he defines two things, which is even practiced today. How? One is he defines the position of a Navadaksha, which is a minister for shipping. And we have a transportation ministry today even available, which acts as an apex body to all the transportation sector. Then he also defines the process on how shipping should be done. Shipping operations, maritime trade should be done by formation of a shipping guild, liner cartel, and we have the shipping line cartels even today. So you see Akhanda Bharat, where the scriptures follow and how even today, knowingly or unknowingly, we are still following it today. The third point that I want to make is my findings, similarity from Kalingan maritime trade, the Chola maritime trade, and the maritime trade of the western sector in Lothal and Dwarka, are the usage of a trained bird, which is called Disa Kaka. Disa means direction, Kaka means bird. A category of, a breed of specialized birds, which were trained to find the shores. Would like to share with all of you is, if anybody of you have visited the Hathigumpha caves, Udaygiri caves in Bhubaneswar, it has the Hathigumpha inscription by the legendary Kalingan ruler Mahamegha Vahana Aira Kharavela. He was a Jain king who fought against the Nandas, and he speaks in the Hathigumpha inscription about the concept of Akhanda Bharat. The 13 years of his regnal reign, defines of the various activities, and there he mentions about the concept of Akhanda Bharat. So this is one, and lastly, in the interest of time, I will give you a fourth anecdote, is from Brajmandal, Vrindavan, Mathura, Gokul. You see, from a scriptural perspective, everybody of you are aware of the parikramas that we do, right? Where did this parikrama come from? The earliest parikrama was in Brajmandal. And from Brajmandal, the concept of parikrama slowly percolated in different parts of India. That is the earliest parikrama which is found and mentioned in the Garga Samhita, in the Brahma Vaivarta Puran, in Harivamsha, and in Srimad Bhagavatam. The first parikrama typically was done by Uddhav Maharaj, the creator of Uddhav Gita, when he tries to do a circumambulation of the entire Rajmandal as per instruction of Krishna and the Gopikas to attain the Prema Bhakti. The second one, which is a part of the major resurrection of Vraj, was done by none other than the great grandson of Sri Krishna, Maharaj Vajranav, under the impetus, guidance, and patronage of Maharaj Parikshit, guided by their Kulguru Maharshi Shandilya, when they were trying to resurrect the entire Vrajmandal. And that is the time when various Krishna deities were sculpted by Maharaj Vajranav himself. One of them is still alive, and you can see when you are there in Jaipur, Jaipur Govindevji. So that's a 5,000-year-old deity. So with this, I will now get into our main topic of discussion. And my first question would be to Abhinavji. Abhinavji, we are talking of the fictions based on our scriptures. So my first question to you is, what exactly do we fictionalize? An event, a character, episode, or a particular battle? What is that we do over here?
Thank you, Suraji. Can I skip that question by saying it's an out of syllabus question? No, let's not do that. So the reason why there is so much of writing on our epics, right? And by epic, fictionalized, right? Because if I'm just telling the same story, then what am I doing new? We already have the original epics to go to. So what is it that we fictionalize? You can fictionalize a character. You can create new characters. You can fictionalize an episode. And when it comes to fictionalizing characters, unfortunately, that is the easiest thing to do. Characters and episodes. And I'll touch upon a couple of controversial topics. For example, Draupadi, Yagnaseni, Panchali. At her Swayamvar, she rejects Karn because Karn is a Sut. What have you done here? You have fictionalized. No. If you read the Mahabharata, Karn actually steps up. He attempts to pierce the target according to the rules set by Dhrishtadyum, and he fails. Just so we are clear, Karn took part in the Swayamvar and he failed. Draupadi never stopped him. Why do we then want to believe that the Draupadi did something like that? Isn't it a disservice to Draupadi by making her, some sort of a person who indulges in discrimination? Why do we make a superhero out of Karn? Karn was no doubt a great character, but let us also be honest about his failings, his shortcomings. On the other hand, if you look at the Varnavat episode, that is such a fascinating episode, right? You have the makings of a conspiracy that modern crime thrillers would be proud of. Can you create a story that is set around that event, that episode? Can you create new characters that are set in that universe? Today, that is called as world building. Lord of the Rings did that, and Game of Thrones did that. You create a full world, you create characters in it. Can you at least, as a writer, as a fiction writer, can you at least do that? Wouldn't that be a better use of your originality, of your talents, rather than taking the easy way out by saying, okay, Karn was a hero, Arjun was a villain, Bhishma did something bad to Shakuni. That's why Shakuni had this lifelong, thirst for revenge. Isn't that taking the easy way out? Okay, I will imagine, I won't read the Mahabharata, I will imagine characters according to my own prejudices. I will project my own insecurities, my own feelings of whatever you might call them, inadequacy, and project them onto the characters of the Mahabharata. Isn't that a disservice? Can you at least be honest about it by saying that, this is not in the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, Karn actually runs away from battle. Not once, but several times. But I like Karn, so I'm imagining Karn to be a hero. Authors don't write that. So what do you fictionalize? One last example is when you have Shakuntala, which is actually the very first Upakhyan of the Mahabharata. What happens when Shakuntala goes to Dushyant and says that this is your son Sarvadaman, or as he came to be known as Bharat? Recognize him, adopt him, and make him the crown prince. And Dushyant refuses. Now, according to the Kalidas version, it's a very docile Shakuntala who goes to Dushyant's court, and it is the contrivance of that ring that actually causes Dushyant to recognize Shakuntala. That was Kalidas's creative interpretation. But what does the original Mahabharata tell us? Shakuntala was a fiery woman. I mean, here is a person who is Vishwamitra's daughter. Now, you can say anything about Vishwamitra, but he was not a docile sage. And his daughter, you are saying, is going to be that meek, submissive woman. No, the Mahabharata tells us when Dushyant says, I don't recognize you, and he says, whoever can come and claim to be my wife and present her child as my son, who are you, woman? Shakuntala basically tells him, who are you to talk to me like this? If you want to compare status, this is what Shakuntala says. My status is like that of a mountain. You are like a bilwa seed in front of me. And if we do these kinds of misinterpretations by projecting characters the way they were not, we also do a disservice to our entire faith and culture. Women in India always had a lot of agency, independence. And we somehow we distort them to conform to Western stereotypes of what women are supposed to be. We are indulging in the worst form of colonialism. We are doing the colonials' job better than they could. I don't know if that answers your question. I went off on a rant, but I thought I was in Arnab's studio for a minute, so I could.
Okay. So, Amy, coming to you, your books on Ramayana and Mahabharata is now across everywhere. And you have covered the length and breadth of Akhanda Bharat also in that sense. My question around this is a very unique one. Sri Rama, during his exile, traveled pan-India before he reached to Samudra Manthan. The tribals gave him a loki, bottle gourd. From there, he built a lingam, which came to be known as Lokinath, and over time it became Loknath. So there are so many of that. Now, all across this, how do you see the Aryan-Dravidian divide that has been pushed into the narratives for years together now, and we are kind of trying to project and share the Akhand Bharat with all those references from across all corners? How do you see it developing, and how you can address this?
Namaste, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Jai Shri Ram.
Ab thoda sa lag raha hai. There should be some energy while we're talking about these topics, right? So first of all, thank you so much, AnyLit Fest, for having me here. Thank you so much, Suryada. And always a pleasure to be here with my senior Abhinavji. One correction, before I give the answer, one correction I want to do to the introduction that is made. I do not write fiction. In fact, what I do is debunk fiction. So the books I have written are, at least I like to claim it, I've tried to keep my assessments to minimum and state or share what Ved Vyas ji or Valmiki ji would have said. Now, not to say to look down upon fiction, because I think fiction has its place and it's very, very important. I don't think I have the caliber to write fiction. I think that also requires some real talent. I probably don't have that. So not looking down upon fiction. You mentioned something very interesting, Suryada, that there are so many stories around the epics themselves, right? So many temples find their origins to some story in Ramayana, Mahabharata. And you asked Abhinav a very important question: what do you fictionalize? Now, interestingly, a lot of these stories about temples, about connections, vagere, vagere, actually don't exist in Mahabharata or Ramayana, Ved Vyas ji's Mahabharata or Valmiki ji's Ramayana. Then how do we make sense of this? In fact, in the talk before this, Nanda Kumar ji said something very interesting. He said that Rukmini ji was actually from Arunachal, whereas people in Maharashtra think she's from Vidarbha. She can't be from everywhere and anywhere, right? Similarly, you have Hidimba temple in the northeast. But you also have Hidimba temple in Himachal. And they all think, ye to hamari hai, she's coming from here. How do we make sense of this? Which means something is true, something is not, right? Now, does that mean that we discard all that is wrong? Actually, no. There is a beauty in the way Indian Sahitya has evolved over time, right? And the connections, be it in Valmiki Ramayana, be it not be in Ved Vyas ji's Mahabharata, doesn't matter. The connections actually tell us that the epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, which are our itihas, very much our itihas, the way they have bound Bharat Varsha together, that everybody wants to be a part of it. Unlike today, when certain paths say, no, we are not your Aryans, yeah, we are somebody else, right? Today, we are becoming more reductive. We are trying to break away from that narrative. Whereas then, the narrative was to associate yourself with those stories, right? And get legitimacy for whatever stories you have. Now, all these stories had a lot of bhava, shraddha in them. The idea was not to break. The idea was to make and keep together. Should such creative liberty be allowed? Absolutely, right? I'll give you another example. The Kevat Prasanga does not come in Valmiki ji's Ramayana, but it comes in Tulsidas ji's. And it is a beautiful Prasanga, right? It shows how much inclusive a Raja Sri Ram was. It is a story that connects, it doesn't break. Those stories are also important. Fictionalizing some of them is perfectly okay. But then where does it get tricky? Lot of examples Abhinavji already gave, the Draupadi example, the Karna example, and maybe we'll talk about it later. But also to tell you, this is not a current thing. A lot of you must have heard that shloka. Suto va suta putro va yova kova bhavamyaham devayatan janmakule madayatam tu paurusham. And every time people talk about Karna, they'll also chant the shloka. He's saying, let me be Suta, let me be a Sutputra. How does it matter? It is not in my hands. The Bhagwan decides the Kula, but it is my Paurusham, it is my Parakram that decides who I am, right? And we get super charged up by these things. Now, this is not a recent shloka. No. It goes back 2000 years. Written in a play by Bana Bhatta Narayanji in Veni Samharam. So this creative liberty have happened then also, right? It has happened then also. Of course, the idea even in those would be little bit of creative liberty, which does not really change the character of the person themselves. But this has happened. We have allowed creative liberty. But where does it get tricky? When people start thinking that is the truth. There is a beautiful book, actually very beautifully written. And I know that a lot of dancers have used that story from fictionalized story of Ramayana to talk about Sita, or to talk about the women. And they show a prasanga where Shurpanakha and Sitama, they are sitting together. Okay. And both of them are sharing their pain. Now, this is actually a beautiful conceptualization of how women bond, how they share their issues. But you know where it gets tricky? You know who they are bitching about? Who they are bitching about? What do you think? Who should they ideally be bitching about? Shurpanakha's husband was killed by Ravan. Yeah? Shurpanakha was made widow by Ravan. The whole problem of Shurpanakha was because her husband was killed. She is the one who lies to Ravan, saying that the Sita is very beautiful. She is worthy being of your wife. Tava bharya anurupa. So go get her. Yeah? She's not saying this is for my nose and ears. You are my brother, take my revenge. No. She's gaming Ravan. Why? Because she knows how lusty he is, right? But instead of him, these two ladies are bitching about Sriram. Imagine. Now, yes, you could have taken a creative liberty here. You could have made those two girls, women, express their pain, but not in a way like. Why were the ears and nose of Shurpanakha cut to begin with? Because she tried to attack Sitama, right? She tried to kill her. And now imagine Sitama and they are cribbing, arere, see, Shurpanakha is saying, see what your husband did to me. See, he also left you. And Sitama is Beukoof kya? She doesn't understand that he saved me. But these things become so popular and we love victimhood. What is wrong with us women? We love to be victimized. Bhad, asus will come and we'll be like, wow, kya likha hai? I see myself in her. All that will happen. Yeah. Now, this is how we are gamed using our own epics and the narratives are changed. Now, coming back to your question, yeah, because this is all sort of tied together. What kind of fiction can be great and allowed, and where is it where we as readers need to be very, very aware? There's a fiction written about Ramayana, and they say Ramayana is no more about Dharma Yuddha. No. It is about an Aryan Ram coming and defeating a Dravidian Ravan. And so people here start thinking, no, our man is Ravan. Yeah, our man is Ravan. We are all his santati. Arey Baba, let's go back to what Valmiki ji has said about Arya Dravida. Let us see what he has said about Arya. To begin with, who is the father of Ravan? Vishrashrava. Rishi Vishrashrava. He's a Brahman Putra. That Valmiki ji doesn't say, so I will not make that but yeah, that is also one of the theories, right? Valmiki ji doesn't say where he was born. But the point is, he's a Brahman Putra, and the word Arya comes multiple times in Valmiki Ramayana, multiple times. Anarya also comes multiple times. Yeah. How and where does it come? I'll show you. I'll tell you. So Kaushalya Ma is called Arya. Keikei is called Anarya, Arya both, but also Anarya. Why? Because she makes such, outrageous demands of Ramasya Aranyagamanam, Bharatasya Abhishechanam, and all that she says. So she is called Anarya. Vali is called Arya by Mandodari. Sugriv is called Arya. When the Vanar Sena is running away because of Kumbhakaran's, they are scared of Kumbhakaran, Angad is telling them, don't be Anarya and run away. What will your family think of you? Stand here and fight. So Angad is also telling that Anaryas are the one who would run away, right? Mandodari is calling Ravan Arya. Ravan is calling Vibhishan Anarya. Why? Because Vibhishan is telling him what you're doing is wrong. Now, so what does Ravan think of himself? He thinks of himself as an Arya only, right? So what does it tell us? One, Arya in our usage, parampara ke anusar, was never a racial shabda. It was not a race suchak shabda. But even if you imagine it to be a race suchak shabda, Sri Ram and Ravan consider themselves from the same race. Now, why is it that something that is so obviously given in our itihas is lost to us? Because we don't read our itihas. We try. Uske karan kya hota hai? I have lot of times girls come up to me and they're like, ma'am, Sri Ram ko poojna kyun chahiye? Why should we even worship Sri Ram? See what he did to his wife, right? That is one aspect. The other aspect is the whole Karna thing, the Jati thing. The women aspect, women are always tortured. Abhinav already spoke about it, that what women were, and maybe we discuss further. But thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Amy. So I'll just take one last question for Abhinav ji. In the entire narrative of writing a fiction versus scriptures, in the originality of the events, Puranik Itihasa mentioned in the scriptures, what is that thin red line? Because Amy also very rightly mentioned on the narratives. What is that thin red line that we should be mindful of for the benefit of our audience, while reading?
Commerce cannot be that dividing line, that if it makes money, it is right. If it doesn't make money, it is wrong. That is anartha. That is not the dharma, it is anartha. But I grappled with it for some time, and right or wrong, or half right or half wrong, I came to the conclusion that it has to be a combination of, do you have the shraddha? Do you have the adhikar? If you're changing something, because there are people who will say that Goswami Tulsidas also changed elements in the Ramayana. When he take a look on derivative fiction, then the very first book, Abhya, is a wonderful example of how you can create an entirely new original story that is set in the Puranic universe and do a good job of it. Gautam Chikarmane's book, The Tunnel of Varnavat, is another example that is set in the Mahabharata era. The principal characters of the Mahabharata play a sort of a role in the background, but it is an entirely new story and very well done. So what is the red line? It has to be Shraddha and Adhikar. It cannot be Arth.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Abhinav ji. I think as Adi Sankara, in his later years, wrote a number of hymns and verses to foster bhakti in the hearts of men. Creations of his Mahisasur Mardini, Ranganathashtakam, Jagannathashtakam, Bhajagoviddam, all these he realized, and when he wrote, he realized that knowledge, if it doesn't culminate into bhakti, then it is a useless tinsel. So now, before going to Amy with the last question, I'll just share one bit of information from an Akhanda Bharat perspective. There is this book called Yukti Kalpataru, written by Maharaj Bhoj of Gurjara Pratihara family in the 10th century. He was a king of Malwa, the ancient Malwa of Dhar, which we know as Dhar today. In this book, he defines how ships should be made. And in his book comes out the very information of the concept of stitched or sewn ships, which were prevalent at that time. But what we don't know, why he, propagated that idea. And he, sitting in the middle of Bharat, propagated and, advised this for Kalinga, for Cholas, for the western coast, when he did not have to do anything with the shipping. Because if you use nails in making the ships, there were magnetic rocks in the sea which used to pull down the ships. And that is from that perspective, he wrote Yukti Kalpataru, where he strongly advised building of stitched or sewn ships. We often come across Government of India's concept of making stitched ships in the Kalinga sector with the help of Indian Navy. But what is important for all of you to know is, it is the concept of sewn ships, where the stitching happens like this in a zigzag format. So with that, I will come to Ami with the last question for the session. Yaggaseni, often portrayed as Nihatta, Durbal, but I know personally, being an avatar of Mahamaya, how fearsome she was. And why don't you share some anecdotes, from the original Mahabharata, which portrays her CEO-like capabilities of marshalling multiple resources, of doing multitasking across the base for the Pandavas.
So Draupadi is one of my favorite topics. I love to speak about her. Unfortunately, the fiction around Draupadi is such which makes her, they always try to show her as a strong woman, but in what way? As a rebel who's fighting the society. Yeah. But does empowerment mean only fighting the society? Does it mean that unless you fight the society and break the norms, you can't be empowered? I think the whole idea of empowerment needs to change. What is empowerment? Empowerment means having agency, being trusted with responsibility, doing your kartavya. Why is that not empowerment? And in fact, that's the beauty of our epics of Itihas, Mahabharata and Ramayana. Every single woman character is so strong, not in the sense of always trying to break the norm. You don't have to. You can be a part of society building. You can be a part of Rajya building. And that is the role which Draupadi has played. Now, interestingly, all the fiction about Draupadi always talk only about some love angle with Karna. They will talk about how the Vastraharan happened, vagere, vagere, all of that. But there's a beautiful prasanga in Mahabharata itself, which talks about what Draupadi was. In fact, every time Draupadi is spoken about, the woman leaves an impression, the way she talks. Be it her discussion in the Vastraharan during the Sabha. During the Sabha, when Dhritarashtra tells her that when Dhritarashtra is very scared because now Bhim has made all these oaths that he will kill, he will rip open Dushasan's heart and all that. And then there are these nimittas which are very bad. So when Dhritarashtra is now scared and he tells Draupadi, Arey, no, you are my Putravadhu, you are like my daughter. I am giving back everything. You ask me Vardhan. I want to give you Vardhan. So first she says, please free my husband, my Yudhishthir, from becoming a slave, because I don't want my eldest son, Prativindya, to become a slave, to be born to a slave father. Dhritarashtra says, okay. Then he says, ask more. I want to give you more. She says, okay, please free all my 4 brothers also, 4 husbands also, and let them get their shastras back. Okay. She could have asked for a lot more, but she says, no, ensure that all my 5 husbands are free of dasatva and give them their shastra back. Dhritarashtra says, ask more. She says, no. As a kshatrani, I am aware of what my adhikar is. I am allowed 2 vardhans, and I have asked that. Now, taking back Indraprastha is the kartavya of my husbands, and I have full faith in their purushartha, in their parakram. They will take it back. I don't need to do it for them. I'm happy with just this. Look at the character of this woman. Then when they are in Vanvas, it so happens that one day Shri Krishna and Satyabhama come to visit. Okay, visit all of them. And he doing their gappa and they are talking and all of that. And Satyabhama and Draupadi get talking because the children, the 5 sons of Draupadi, they are spending their time in Dwarka as well as in Panchal. So she's asking about her sons and Satyabhama is answering and all of that. And then at one point, Satyabhama is like, Draupadi, you have to tell me something. I have a question. And she's like, yeah, ask. She says, how is it that your husbands, you have 5 husbands, Tava Mukha Preksha Satatam Pandavaha, these Pandavas are always looking at your face. How have you become your Vashanugaha? How is it that you have completely controlled them? I have one husband, Krishna. Him also I cannot control. You've controlled 5. How is it that they're so much in love with you and they do everything that you ask them to? And she says, is there a Vashikaran mantra? If you have a Vashikaran mantra, tell me, I'll use. And Draupadi says, no, Satya, there is no Vashikaran mantra and don't even go that way. It will do more harm than good. But you are right. My husbands respect me a lot. Let me tell you why. And then there is this whole beautiful 3 sargas of Draupadi telling Satyabhama how she lived her life as the queen of Indraprastha, as the wife of the Pandavas. She talks about her role as the wife, so how she took care of their other wives, children, Kuntima, how she ensured that the Pandavas could always finish their Nitya Karma and all of that. Then she talks about her responsibilities for the Rajya and the Rajmahal. There she says that we used to have lots of guests, like in lakhs, who would come to eat. And to serve those lakhs of guests, there were lakhs of servants. There were lakhs of thousands of maids and helpers. I knew all of them by name, she says. And I knew Krita Kritam, what was done, what was not done, what was pending, what was not pending. I knew if everybody had eaten, not eaten, but I also knew if the helpers and the maids had eaten or not eaten. I would wake up before everybody, I would sleep after everybody. So she says all of this, and I can keep talking about it, but 2 things I have to say. At one point, she says, Sarva Ragnyam Samudayam Ayam cha Vyayameva cha Aham Eka Aham Vedmi. Sarva Ragnyam Samudayam. The finances, the income of the entire Rajya. Ayam Vyayameva cha. What came and what went away, income and expenditure. Eka Aham Vedmi. I was the only one who knew it. I had complete transparency and insight into what we earned in Indraprastha, what was the expenditure. Then she says, Adrishyam Varunasyeva Nidhi Purnam Mahadudhim. So Nidhi is treasury. So she says, the treasury of Indraprastha, how was it? She's like, it was vast, like the ocean. Like the ocean has lots of ratnas. That's how our treasury was. Eka aham vedmi kosham. She says, I was the only one who knew what the treasury was. She says, if Yudhishthir had to go on a yatra, lakhs of ghodas and hathis and everything would go, lakhs of rathas would go. He would take with him lots of gifts. I was the one who managed all of this. Now imagine what kind of trust the Pandavas had on her, that she had complete insight into finances, which the even brothers did not have. And when will that kind of trust come? When she has proven her capabilities, when she has shown that she's trained enough and she can take care of that, right? That was Draupadi. And I say that all the time. She was almost like the CFO and CEO of Indraprastha. And we think of her only as Vastraharan. Imagine. I'll say one last thing about Draupadi, because I think that prasang is very rarely spoken about. In the end, all her sons get killed because of Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama goes. The sons are alive. This happens after the war has ended, right? The 5 sons get killed. And she's obviously upset and angry. And she says, I want revenge. So the brothers go, Bhim go, they all go. And they basically get the money out of Ashwatthama's head. We know all that. After they come back, she sees the money and she's quiet. And Bhim tells her, see, he's our guru's son, so we didn't kill him. Draupadi says, I completely understand. He's your guru's son. The way he's respectable to you, he's respectable to me. My sons deserved a revenge. They have gotten their revenge. Now I don't ask for anything more. The criminal has been punished. That makes me happy. I don't want anything more. And the lady goes back to resuming her task at the Maharani of Indraprastha once again, in spite of all her own pain. This is the grace and character of Draupadi. Do you even need fiction to appreciate this character? In fact, I think she's a role model for all women that we have here today. Yeah. So, thank you.
So with this, we'll open up the session. Only one question with the time that we have left. Any questions from the audience? Most welcome. I think Mr. Agarwal has a question. Can someone, a person from there? Okay, I'll just help.
This is regarding fictionalization you told, but this is a creativity. The essence should not be changed. We have that thing, this right, which is being given in Sanatan, that we can interpret the way we want. We can have multiple viewpoints. But this creative free. What is the type of the spectrum? We do not need to change the essence. And this is, and the interpretation, the creative interpretation is available in Sanatan, which is not available in an Abrahamic religion. That is the blasphemous in that. So the fear psychosis is being created. The individual liberty of freedom and expression is available in Sanatan. I don't see that narrative actually going across. We need to create a yardstick rather than we have to portray our narrative, our viewpoint, rather than speaking against Abrahamic religion or something like that. But we need to say that blasphemy is actually, the people have glamorized it like anything, the Western narrative. The individual creativity and freedom of expression is there. It comes with a responsibility. I totally agree with you, ma'am. The essence is
Is this? Is Shambhukwat, when people get super defensive about it, I would say, do we understand what has actually happened? Or are we just listening to that we are being told that it is Jativadi? Yeah. Or is there something more to it? So because we don't have time, I'll not get into the story per se. But what I've done in Ramayana Unraveled in my book is that I have put it as an epilogue. And I've tried to explain with multiple examples from Ramayana that even if we assume Shambhukwat is true, we really don't have to be defensive about it. It is actually Sri Ram upholding dharma and nothing at all. It is basically that. So sometimes we get defensive over something just because we don't know it. If we read the Itihas for what it is, we'll realize that it's not something we need to worry about.
So I think, okay, last question. Just make it short. No.
For the next program, we
so
have kindly excuses.
and take it off.
Thank you so much, the panelists, for giving us a beautiful insight into the scriptures and the stories and fictions around the scriptures. May I now request Sri Bharat Gopu to come and honor the guests here. And there was a wonderful way of putting across Shakuntala's bright, brilliant character and the explanation of Arya and Anarya. And to the women here, there was a beautiful message here. We were once ruling and we must miss the bus and better not miss it one more time and get onto it. May I request the organizers to come and honor the guests, please? They're coming here.
If anyone is interested in an offline discussion, there is a very striking parallel in one episode of the Mahabharata between what happens there and what happens in the Godfather. I kid you not. That's a teaser, by the way.
And Ms. Ani Ghanthara, we all do take it very seriously that Ravana is a Brahmin. And the Thank you so much for traveling through the stories based on the scriptures. And now we move on to a session with the academicians. We have named it as VC session. May I request Dr. Shanti Shri Dhulipudi Pandit, VC of JNU, and Ujjwala Chakradeo, VC of SNDT Women's University, to come on to the dais. And in conversation with them is our own Shefali Vaidya here.
Namaskar. So this isn't so much in conversation. Actually, this is such a power-packed panel to begin with two of the most accomplished academicians of the country here. So I am not going to stand between them and you for a long time. I'm just going to introduce the topic. The topic is Ek Bharat, Shreshth Bharat. How do we take education from here? And I'm sure that both these learned personalities have lots to say about this. The only thing is, because we are running short of time and we are trying to stay as close to the timetable as possible, they don't have as much time as I would like them to have. So I'm going to keep my interaction to the minimum, and I would request Shanti Shri Pandit ji, the Vice Chancellor of JNU, to put forth her opening statement.
எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். சென்னை இஸ் மை சிட்டி. நான் இங்கே வளர்ந்தேன் சென்னை 28 மந்தவள்ளியில். ஸோ படித்தது ரோஸ்ரி மெட்ரிக் ஸ்கூல், பிரசிடென்சி காலேஜ், இல்லைன்னா மாநில கல்லூரி. ஐ எம் ஆல்சோ த ஃபர்ஸ்ட் உமன் அண்ட் ஆல்பனஸ் வைஸ் சான்சலர் ஆஃப் JNU. ஸோ தமிழ்நாட்டிலேருந்து போன பெண்ணு தான். அண்ட் வி ஆர் சேஞ்சிங் JNU. We have brought in JNU multiple narratives. உங்களுக்கு தெரியும் that we have renamed our think tank from Jawaharlal Nehru to Vidyaranya Institute of Knowledge and what is advanced studies. It is being on 29th, the Sringeri Mata Shankaracharya has blessed the statue of Vidyaranya, which has already come into JNU. With it, we also have Tiruvalluvar and Lord Nataraja. So that is Vikasit Bharat. Lord Shiva has come in, and through the Odisha chair, Jagannath will come in. So Vishnu also comes in, and hence JNU is as Indian or as Bharati as any universe. I'm just going to go to the topic due to paucity of time. The first issue I want to put before all you learned audiences, who suppressed the Indicad narrative. As it was said in the last session, the definition of history is facts are sacred. Interpretations can vary. But JNU historians changed it. And the Marxist wokes, or what I call the cancel culture of the Nehruvian state, and including the Dravidian state, is interpretations are sacred, facts can vary. And that is what has happened. Why? I'll give you the Nehruvian consensus Martanda Varma defeated the Dutch. Anywhere in the history books? Or we have Rajendra Chola, also called as Gangai Konda Chola. Gangai Kondanana, north-south were divide. And all of you know in Purananur, also, which is older, Sangam literature, you have the mention of Rama and Sita. So my question is, how are we alienating this? And I think this is basically a colonial project or the project of the invaders. And this is very important. And basically this began with the Aryan invasion theory constructed by the colonials, especially Max Muller. Max Muller did it in the 1800s for the benefit of the colonials. And this was done by Alexander Campbell. And for Tamil Nadu, it was Bishop Robert Cardwell, who wrote the Dravidian grammar. It is in that book he put in the seed of the so-called Aryan Dravidian divide, which is again goes against the racial theory. Sarvepalli, the Radhakrishnan said, we are a mixed race. See, many of us, do we even look South Indian? When I studied in JNU as a student, many people thought I was a Punjabi Jat. Because they said, you don't look like a South Indian at all. So we are a mixed race. So this theory, and even that the Brahmins are Sanskritized and they have come from outside. This is also again a myth. Why? The Raki Gargi excavation that was done in Haryana proves by carbon dating that we are a civilization that is 8,000 years old. So even the Europeans were picking up stones at that time. How can they come and civilize you and me? We civilized them. If you know, we were an outward-looking civilization. Same with the Cholas. We did not normalize loot, plunder, and rape. And in history, you cannot normalize it. Whereas the Cholas did it by trade and commerce. The proto-states, the whole of Southeast Asia was done by the Tamil kingdoms. You don't have this type of plunder. So if you see clearly this whole myth, it is brought out very well in the book by a famous historian called Airavatam Mahadevan. He wrote, and his student K. Balakrishnan, who's a civil servant, wrote, please read it, a very good book called Indus to Vaigai. There is, if you see the Keeladi inscription, the Tamil Brahmi script is very close to the Indus Valley script. So where is the division? So you break, and even this issue of caste, it is not Varna and Jati. So first they demonize the Brahmins, and then they demonize the Hindus or the Hindu culture or the Hindu phobia. So I call it cancel culture. Before the wokes and the left discovered it, I think our people were smarter. And I would only add saying that the idea of Kumari Kandam, the sacred geography, our connections up till Japan, the similarity between Japanese and Tamil. And hence, this whole issue of or even see Shiva, who is the presiding deity of not only in Kashmir, but also in Tamil Nadu. Chidambaram is taken as the center of the universe, especially for, and if you read Unmai Velakam, verse number 36, it tells us that creation arises from the drum. Protection proceeds from the hand of hope. From the fire proceeds destruction. From the foot afloat gives release. It will be observed that the fourth hand points to this lifted foot, the refuge of the soil. I would tell many of you, please read Ananda K. Kumaraswamy's brilliant essay called The Dance of Shiva. And this greatly inspires. Now I would only try to finish up because she has given me very little time. That one, we are the feminist civilization of the world. Draupadi is the first feminist, not Simone de Beauvoir. Sita, the first single mother. Kannagi, the first citizen activist. We are also the first nature-centric civilization, Panchabhutas. Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, you have the lingams named after the Panchabhutas. The Western people need not come and teach us on environment. And even on LGBT, Shikandi. So we are a very, very modern. So this whole idea of the modernization project does not work for us. We were much modern before even tradition, modernity divide that the West brings in. Second is decolonize the Hindu mind. Please do not think that we are inferior. And we have the Nehruvian state cancel culture. We need to bring back people like Sri Aurobindo, who got his enlightenment in Puducherry. And Swami Vivekananda also. We have in Chennai or even in Kanyakumari. And Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan. I would say, please read The Hindu Way of Life. This is extraordinarily important. And I think that if Vikasit Bharat, Ek Bharat, the universities, especially like JNU, which is India's topmost university, the most important is narrative power. We have achieved political power, but if you want to sustain political power, it is only narrative power. And narrative power is what? So please write, not only as Dandakumar ji say, talk. Please talk, but also please write. University teachers, give research projects to your students on these gaps in history, which are huge. And let us bring back the factual history back, not the interpretative history. Because the interpretative history follows Goebbels. See, one thing, Hitler was intelligent. Don't think he's an idiot. Joseph Goebbels said, tell a lie and repeat it 10 times. It becomes the gospel truth. That is what the JNU group of historians have done it. And we are trying to de-school everybody. And I hope we have succeeded and we are succeeding, but it's a long process. And each one of you need to be a part of it. And hence in JNU also, we are changing the way we are doing research as well as this. So far, last 2 years, there's Shanti. We hope we'll get into prosperity phase as well. Thank you all. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that very short but very, very impactful speech. And I'm glad you talked about the fakeness of the North-South narrative. For the life of me, I don't understand how Dravida, which was simply a word to describe geographically the location of the Indian peninsula, it means it is surrounded by Drava, liquid, on all 3 sides. So anybody who lives in this peninsula is Dravida. So how did the geographical term became associated with the identity politics is actually a subject of great study, and how it's been distorted. Yes, how it's been distorted and made into a racial term. But that's but I have a theory about this, and that relates to Dr. Chakradev's topic actually. I think our decline started when we reduced our temples to just places of worship. They never were. They were institutions in itself. They were institutions of education, commerce, arts and crafts, Sangeeta, Kala, everything. And I would like Dr. Chakradev to talk about it. What roles did temples play and what
for us? And beyond that, Satish Grover and other very few Indians who wrote history of architecture had those books with them. And accidentally, one accident, second accident, third accident, and we have the all beautiful temples scattered all around us. Then Claude Batley, who became the first head of the department of JJ College of Architecture, he says that, yeah, there are very good pieces of architecture around and people have not realized it. Indians don't know about it. Let me do the documentation of these. And then when I do the documentation of these structures, I'll give the scholarship of 1,000 rupees. And he became a very great person of conservation of the Indian architecture. Yet at that point of time, the narrative that came up was Yet there is so much of distortion all over. There is no similarity and no order as it was there in the Roman architecture, because Roman architecture is what we were studying, and we cannot define the order. He didn't realize there's a diversity within us. And this diversity is the character, as was very rightly said by Nanda Kumarji in his first lecture, that we cannot have the history similar to theirs. Likewise, we do not have the description of our architecture as theirs. We do not have the ancient architecture and the middle architecture and the recent architecture. Architecture is a mirror of the society, and similarly, the way we were, the architecture was diverse. There's a diversity in entire India, and this diversity, when we look at it, is reflected through architecture, through our temples as well. And we have though there is a continuity, we have a diversity in the expression of these temples from north to south and from east to west. All temples are temples, yet all of them are so different, so beautiful. These gems, which are scattered all around us, are the mirrors, are showcasing the thought processes and the technology which was prevailing at that point of time in our Bharat. Unity in diversity is what has been told to us all these years. Do we really want to say that it is unity in diversity or diversity in unity? So diversity in unity, if we say, then we consider our Bharat as one human body. And then we say my finger and my head and my legs and other things. But when we say unity in diversity, the leg is a different entity, eye is a different entity, and we're trying to pull them together and put them here. So if we have this complete change in our lookout, in our viewpoint, in our standpoint, only then we will be able to look at our Bharat in the real sense. Is through education it can happen, and education is a tool to change the society. Yes, we need to believe this, and we can make changes through that. We have been always studying that history of Bharat is more than 5,000 years old. We needed people like Michael Denodo to come here, British to say that, no, there's something more to it. The river Saraswati, though it is hidden in Prayag, we have been saying Triveni Sangam, but we do teach in history of architecture also, and in many histories, that our history started with in 2500 or 5,000 years ago from now, by Indus Valley civilization. Where has Saraswati civilization gone? Why have not been the research done, so much of research done by so many of, even in Pune, Vakankar organization and Bhandarkar organization, they are doing the research on Saraswati river. And what was that Saraswati river? And why on her banks the civilization which developed led to Indus Valley civilization, the merging of the two civilizations, the flow of the river Saraswati will show us the expanse of the entire civilization of Bharat. And on her banks, we flourished. We flourished, and there are the best example with the remains small part of that existence is in the form of Sharada Peeth temple, which is now in Pakistan. Yet it's a example, best example, remaining example of architecture of temple university. We know about Takshashila, we know about Nalanda, but we hardly talk about Sharada Peeth. Sharda Peeth was full of all those treasures of the knowledge and the literature. How many years ago? We just don't know. It was a university in itself, and it was a temple. So what you rightly said, Shefaliji, temples were not just the places of worship. They were the places of worship of almost everything that the human race or human being should revere to, or should do puja of. And this is the best And the oldest example remaining probably is that of the Sharda Peeth there. Then we have here Sringeri Peeth also. The library of Sringeri Peeth and the library of Sharda Peeth, if we compare, are the best examples where the education and temples were the same places. Who else would then you all know about how the Tanjore temple and the dance performances and learning the dance art. So dancing, music, and also the sculpture and art forms and the entire facade of the temple, which is so beautifully designed. That entire thing is a part of an education for we Indians or we Bharatiya, and right from those days till here. So every person in the society had to go to the temple for some reason or the other. And recently we have been saying that those are the temples, and we are here in the society. So the entire formal education has been devoid of the spirituality, because we have kept temples away from our entire life, and some of us try to go to the temple only for some part of our day, maybe once in a week, or maybe sometimes at the time of a festival. Sometimes, yes. So myself and my husband, we have made it a point that on every Saturday we will go to Hanuman Mandir and pray there. And for many years we have been doing that, because unless we decide the day for us, see, there is a liberty given by our culture to us. We don't have to go on every Friday, but we can go on any day in the temple. So we make a rule for ourselves and we go there. So that's how probably the diversity which has been given and the flexibility which has been given to us by our culture can be reinterpreted by us in this manner. Then there is these temples which were the places for every social activity were also the places of education for us. And one example, my recent experience I would like to share with you all, how the continuity in the culture can happen through these structures, is I went to Kolhapur, where I had studied in my 11th and 12th standard. And after that, after 45 years, I visited recently last month. And I was looking for my house, my place where I had lived. And everything had changed, and I could not even make out anything about my house also. But then I went to Kolhapur Amba Devi Mandir, and then I could relate everything, because the mandir remained as it was. So those are the stable parts of our society. They are continuing there. The stability to the society, there has to be some focal point. These temples are the ones which are there. Who built them? And why should we know about these temples? We need, and what is the connection with the education is what I am trying to put forward in a little given time with me. It's a vast subject, and I don't know how to squeeze it down. But however, the formal education which my generation has taken, and even yours, everybody in this hall, is all about intellect, how intelligent you are, and how you can show your intelligence. But we as a human being are not just intellect, we are emotional also, and spirituality relates to emotions. So the education which actually was a part of a spirituality has been devoid of the spirituality, has been not been there. If the education happens in these temples, probably the spirituality can be brought back. And with that, the same curriculum can be taught in a very different way. National education policy talks about the multidisciplinary education. And when we talk about multidisciplinary education, at that point of time, just thought came to me, and I talked to the president of Council of Architecture, that if you identify 10 such architects, gurus, who are gurus, and you give 5 students or 10 students to them, and they teach them the way they want to. Maybe they teach them in a temple also. And they sit there and they teach them And then at the end of some years, they say these are the objectives they have achieved, so you should be able to give them the degree or the license of architecture. Similar thing could happen to any subject probably. But Vastu, which is a theory of architecture, which was never taught to us in our 5 years of curriculum. So there is a need to change the entire curricula of architecture. And we were taught climatology. India is a diverse country, and in this diversity, the reflection of climate is seen on architecture. Am I? Okay. I'll come to that. So this diversity of architecture, which we see, is reflected through architecture. Climate is seen through architecture, and that's why we have diverse architecture from north, south, east, west, and that's reflected in the expression of our temples also. These temples were only one last point, 2 minutes. There are many things flooding in my mind, but I'll restrict myself to one point, that climatology is just one small part. Vastu Shastra, Sthir Sthapati, and his entire study is inbuilt with the spirituality. That spirituality should come to education. One last controversial example. I am also a town planner, and I'm also believe in the archaeological and conservation systems, which I have learned. In my student is sitting there, she knows about conservation, and this conservation concept is so contrary to the Jirnodhar concept, which is what was shown to us by our Prime Minister Modi ji, that Jirnodhar does not mean conserving the monument as it is. Unless there is an idol in the temple, we do not make a monument a temple. So we are not conserving the monuments, we want to restore the temples. So to restore the temples, Jirnodhar concept given in our agamas should be followed by us. And there are many things in our architecture which we need to study and express through our curriculum education, and we need to revive those right from the school days to the general education and specifically to architecture education. Thank you so much. I might not have been very clear, I understand, but there are many thoughts coming up, that's why.
Thank you so much. And I'm really sorry that I had to cut short this session. But in the evening, we have the governor's address. And since that is very, very strictly mandated that it should start and end on time, we have to work backwards. I cannot take any questions now because the next section is there and the speakers are already in the auditorium. But I am sure that both these learned academicians will be there. Yeah. that is actually a very, very good suggestion. But if you have any questions, I'm sure that post this session, and we'll be breaking for lunch, you can always speak to the speakers. Thank you so much for being such patient listeners. And thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for...
Thank you so much for this wonderful session. I request Shefali Vedya to honor our panelists here. May I request you to honor Ujjwala Chakradio, Dr. Ujjwala Chakradio, and Dr. Shanti Shri Bulupudi. Thank you so much, ma'am. That was an insight into what is in store for us from the great academic institutions. And now we have yet another story, and the storytellers are going to walk us through war stories. Before lunch, it's going to be exciting to listen to the war stories. And may I now request Major Manik M. Jolly, founder, CEO of GRID, Grassroots Rural Innovative Development, a consultant, speaker, and trainer with UNIFC, World Bank, and Renewable Energy, here with us, twice decorated military advisor, and he is the founder of a voluntary organization, Dream and Guidance, will now walk us through the war stories. Over to you, gentlemen.
Jai Hind, everyone. And it's been can we say a little louder? Jai Hind, everyone. Thank you. Okay, now we have the two great personalities here whom we always look up in Twitter and social media. A true war correspondent who has been on ground in various conflict reporting. We hardly have very few journalists in India doing that. And a very reputed journalist, a staunch nationalist. I've seen him for the years so far. And a journalist who doesn't give away our gun locations. Okay. Okay. And here's my senior. And I have a lot to speak about him. We'll definitely speak about it. Infantarian, a Gorkha by his blood. Spent very valuable time in military intelligence. A pioneer in setting up cyber security or cyber cell in the Indian Army. He was a founder member. Have played a very active role in counterterrorism operation in earlier days of it. It was very tough. What you see today is something different. Has been awarded with Sena Medal, one of the highest gallantry award. From there, he transitioned into corporate, has been a pioneer, a person in solar. He has represented India in various global forums. And he's a key pivotal person whom I would say in changing the rural India. You can visit his LinkedIn profile. You can read about him. A lot he has done. Time is short. So now I'll initiate this discussion with the question to both of my panelists. War reporting or war stories. How do we rate ourselves when we compare to movies like Saving Private Ryan, or I would say Hollywood as a benchmark? Over to you, Shiv.
Thank you very much, Major, and privileged to be on this stage. And thank you to the organizers for inviting me. The question you ask is a broad one. It's a difficult one, but I will try and answer it because I actually happen to have some experience in all three of the things that you just mentioned. I don't think India has made a movie yet like Saving Private Ryan, but that I don't think that is the fault of India. Because we are equally a war-fighting country. This is a country that has fought 6 major wars. This is a country that famously, and Major Manik will, I'm sure, tell you more about it, doesn't really know the word peacetime. You know, in this country, we have gallantry awards that are given away on Republic Day and Independence Day. And many of those awards are peacetime awards, which has always struck the military as weird because there is no peacetime for most of the military. We are constantly in a state of conflict because of our 2 wonderful neighbors. So this is a country that's constantly on its feet, militarily speaking. I've had the privilege of starting as a defense correspondent very young, so I had a chance to cover many conflicts and wars from Sri Lanka to Libya. Last year, I spent a month and a half in Israel and Palestine, reporting on the conflicts there. Since you mentioned war stories, I'm the author of a series of books called India's Most Fearless, which are basically first-hand accounts of recent military operations. And one of the reasons why I decided to write these books is because, and by the way, Chennai is my city. I grew up here. I was born here. This very much is still home for me, even though I've lived many more years outside Chennai. So I feel very much at home here. And I can tell you that growing up in Chennai on Independence Day, thank you, and Republic Day, I'm sure many of you would also see it, that there would be this long list of soldiers, airmen and sailors who would receive these gallantry awards, Shaurya Chakra, Sena Medal, like Major Jolly has got, and various other kinds of decorations for their feats of bravery. And usually in the press release or the newspaper clippings that would come out, there would maybe be a line or two, very rarely a photograph of those military personnel, and that's how it goes. And these stories would just be forgotten. And this always occurred to me as being very, very unfair, because as a defense correspondent, as someone who was covering these stories, covering these operations, I always felt how unfair it was for these people and their families, that the country had no idea about the reality of what they actually did. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to write my book. So that's where war stories comes in. So my book, and I'm not boasting, but my book series was the first that decided to tell first-hand stories. So my books are not based on sources. My books are not based on second-hand information. We cover every operation. It has to be first-hand, which means we report from the army units or from the Air Force squadrons or from the warships, and that's how we've chosen to tell those stories. And we've also decided, and this is something I feel the need to emphasize always, is that people forget that the military is not just about the soldiers, the pilots and the sailors, but it's also about their families, which nobody really ever sees. Nobody ever hears about those families. And that's why in my books, in the stories that I've told, I'm only halfway through. It's like this seems like it's going to be a lifelong mission, because I've written 3 books. There are 3 more to come. There probably will be many more after that, because the number of heroes we get in our military is never going to stop. Yeah, that's how I would say it. I think India has a great wartime legacy. There's no shortage of stories to tell. And hopefully at some point in the future, we'll have our own Saving Private Ryan as well.
Thank you, Shiv. And forgot to mention India's Most Fearless, 3 series of books. One of the highest seller, 50,000 plus copies, if I remember, for the first edition. Those who are interested in this, I would say as a nationalist, do read his book. It is very authentic. I read it. I've gone through it. It gives you a first-hand information. It doesn't have much of masala. Yeah, the books are available outside the stall. Those who want to purchase the hard copy, you can do so. And Manik sir, now the question to you. This is one of your fans from US who wrote a mail to me yesterday night. He wanted me to ask you this question. It says, why army movies are too less, I would say the war movies are too less in efficiency in number, rather thug movies are no less than zillions in both efficiency and numbers. Thug movies, crime movies. So we have the hero does everything, and he flies and he takes bullets, he never dies. So those movies are in zillions and these are in
Firstly, thanks to the organizers for inviting me here. I started my corporate career in Chennai, though it was only 3 months I stayed here. And it was a conversation on Twitter when somebody asked me, soldiers get a lot of respect in India. Yes, a lot. But I actually wrote in the second line the amount of love and respect I got in Tamil Nadu and Gujarat. I said, I cannot match it anywhere. It was very touching. So it's always nice to come back. And thank you, Shiv, for writing those books. We need people like you to tell our stories. Now, coming back to the question, actually, I think war stories, we are not in habit of telling, actually, I feel. Whenever we read our even historical instances, we have been programmed to receive war stories as such. Islamic invaders came and they ran over India. British came, they fought Palasi, Buxar, and Maratha gone, and British came. We move from milestone to milestone. We are very number based. He had 10,000 soldiers. He has 5,000 soldiers. We do not discuss difficult topics in forums. We don't make movies on ideological issues. And if I honestly feel, if the Kal Chakra is moving and India is again going to become Sone ki Chidiya, our bad time will also come, because if we are not prepared this time, there is only one person. I'll tell you so if we make a movie on Shivaji, we will show him as a war leader. We don't show him as somebody who's the only one who understood what ideological war is. We don't teach in our army. We don't, because our 2 neighbors, our enemies, they are fighting ideological wars. We are fighting military wars. There's a huge difference. When on 14th August, our leaders wish you a happy Independence Day, Pakistan, and may you prosper and all that. Their prosperity in the line is written is Ghazwa-e-Hind. It's eradication of India as it stands. But we still keep wishing them fine. We've always been wanting to good boys. That's our problem. We always believe in Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. And that is the ideology we followed in our war stories also. Even if somebody studied high school history, you ask them who burned Nalanda, people will say Bakhtiyar Khilji and all. We never tell them he was bested by some tribesmen in Northeast actually. He died a very desolate, sad death and was assassinated. We tell everyone Ghaznavi came and he routed Somnath temple. We never told actually first time he came, he was sorted out by a Chandela king and he went back and did not come back for many years. Our history runs in a manner, our stories are told in a way that we were just lying there to be picked and kicked around, and anybody who came. First invader was, I think, Muhammad bin Qasim. When he came and was beaten so badly for actually hundreds of years, nobody came. That was the lesson they learned. It took hundreds of years for these guys to find. It's like we were a very solid wall. But if you keep knocking against it and keep ramming against it for hundreds of years, it might break down. And nobody can take away the infighting that was happening and all those reasons. So I would say if movies were a depiction of how a country or a society or a nation tells its stories, we are representing how we are. We are very happy with slapstick comedy. We are very happy representing how soldiers are represented. Either they'll always be 10 feet tall. They'll always beat everyone up. They'll drink and sing and dance. I can assure you, whenever we get angry, we don't start singing, whenever we have a success in military combat, we don't start singing or dancing or we've never done that, right? But there's always a stereotype that is presented how military men are. He'll be a big mustache guy with a cane or a rifle, and he will invariably have a daughter who the hero will quote, and then he will like, I'll kill you, then he'll win him over. It's actually demeaning, It takes away the intellect, the hard work, the physical effort that goes into becoming a military officer. 3-4 lakh people applied, and out of which 200-300 get into NDA, and out of which 10-15% also leave because the training is so tough. After that, you have to 3 years NDA, 1 year IMA, constant training. Then you have to keep passing exams while in service. The movies tend to remove aspect and just focus on he drinks rum, he has a mustache, and he has a dog and a daughter.
And he always wears a uniform. You will welcome him.
So I say the story of the normal Bollywood, I've seen like hardly 15 movies in my life. At a very young age, I saw them and I realized this will burn my brain. I never saw them. I hardly see movies. But for whatever I've seen and I see, keep seeing clips, they are okay in producing what is absorbed by audience. If we stop watching that, I think they will also learn a lesson that we need to improve our content. We can't show cartoons as our historical characters and, try to make it best. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll try to play a devil's advocate here. Most of you would be aware there's a controversy which is slightly on now on a movie of Shiva Karthikeyan. The trailer was out. The movie's name is Amaran. It was a biopic of Major Mukund Varadarajan from SS81 from Officer Training Academy, one of the greatest heroes of our times. Shiv is the man behind the movie. And yeah, please. He hasn't advertised it, he hasn't spoken about it, but we all know a lot of hard work has gone in. And the movie, the story crux comes from his book, India's Most Fearless. And because this is the most recent time hero would possibly the 2K kids and the Millennium kids will eventually connect with. I would want to put a question to you. There is already a controversy, but it's done by a fringe group, a communal fringe group. But if you would have definitely seen that movie without disclosing the stories of it. But how close is that movie if I compare with your book? How the current one, Amaran? Yeah.
Can you just clarify which controversy you're talking about? Because last I counted, there were about 8 controversies surrounding the movie.
So there's a protest which happened, I think somewhere in Ramnad or so. They are a group of protesters. We can count them by numbers. I think 8, 10 of them. They got together and they said the Kashmiri Muslims have been portrayed as terrorists, and this is not acceptable to us. Ban on movie and so and so.
So the controversy that you refer to is actually the most cartoonish of all the controversies. The other controversies are actually much more serious. So I'm glad you asked me about this one. But if you go onto social media and type Amaran and stuff, I'm sure you will see about the controversies. Many of them are much more serious. But since you mentioned this one, what Major Madan is talking about is that a bunch of people have protested about this movie because the trailer is out. It's a short 2.5-minute teaser trailer that's out. I don't know how many of you may have seen it. It's on YouTube, and it depicts some pretty traditional images that you see as far as a story like this is concerned in Kashmir. You'll see terrorists, you'll see stone pelters, you'll see the army in action, you'll see some death, and nothing out of the ordinary, but really beautifully produced and beautifully shot. Now Siva Karthikeyan plays a guy called Major Mukund Vardarajan, who was decorated posthumously with an Ashoka Chakra for his role. Now, the reason why this particular protest...
Sorry to interrupt. Ashok Chakra is the highest gallantry award given in a peacetime. It's as good as a Paramveer Chakra.
It's equivalent to Paramveer Chakra in peacetime. Again, peacetime, which is a ridiculous word. Okay, so the reason why, when I saw, and obviously when this protest happened, people started posting the videos and tagging me. My name was the first to be tagged even before the film producers and stuff. So I was like, I just wrote the book. I'm not making the movie. But anyway, so the reason why that particular protest is so ignorant, ridiculous, and outwardly is because if anyone has read the story of Major Mukund Vardarajan, this should serve as an example of not jumping the gun and making your mind up, because the story of Mukund Vardarajan actually confirms exactly the opposite of what they're saying. It's an amazing story of a young officer, recently married to Indu Rebecca, very much from Tamil Nadu, right? Serving all the way in Shopia in South Kashmir. And he had built a huge, beautiful relationship with many villages and villagers who lived in that area. They had a name for him. Okay, they called him Khan Sahib. Okay, they had their own local name for him because Major Mukund Vardarajan was too complicated and stuff. So Khan Sahib he was. Okay, and that's actually a name that they gave to many different officers in those areas because it was like a term of endearment and respect, and it's amazing because Major Mukund Vardarajan was the guy who would actually go out into these villages and tell them, okay, so your kids have exams over the next 2 weeks. Me and my unit will make sure that nobody comes from the outside and threatens you guys while your kids are having their exams. That's my personal guarantee to you. And that's how he, won the hearts of many of these people. I don't want to spoil the story for you because it's a truly amazing story which you will see in the movie. But these 8 or 9 protesters who said this is branding, people as Muslims as terrorists and stuff like that is absolutely ridiculous. And all of this goes down to the incredibly unfair black and white depictions of the Indian army because of the huge amounts of leftist propaganda that has fed on this idea of the army as a purveyor of human rights abuses in Jammu and Kashmir, which is a ridiculous untruth. I'm a defense correspondent. Whether there is something happening in Kashmir or not, I make it a point even now. And I've been a defense correspondent for 20 years, since August 2004. I make it a point every year to go to Kashmir, whether there's a big story happening there or not, because that is a really special part of the country. And I personally would advise all of you to go there. Since 2019, since the article of abrogation of 370, it's become like any other place, except that it's just really, really beautiful, and the weather is great, and there's a lot to do and stuff. So, but the idea that has been propagated for so long that the army has been this monster force, occupying force in Kashmir, is complete rubbish when you read stories like those of Major Mukund Vadrajan and many other officers who've served in Jammu and Kashmir. And I'm sure Major Jolly has also served there, so he knows exactly what it's like. Many young Indians come to me and ask a question that's commonly asked is, have there been human rights abuses? Now, the one thing I will always say, just to end this thought, is that there are no blacks and whites in conflict. This is not a black and white issue. There are no fierce goods and bads. These are really difficult places where men and women have to take sometimes controversial decisions to perform the larger good, save more lives. Have there been human rights abuses over the years? Some, most certainly not the kind of overwhelming human rights abuses that much of leftist propaganda projects the Indian army as. But I can tell you this very, very clearly. And remember, as a defense correspondent, I am the first one to write negative stories about the army. I may be writing books about army heroes, but I cannot tell you how many times I've been in trouble with the army because I've told things that are not palatable for the army or the air force or the navy. So believe me when I say that I stand right in the middle. I'm not on anybody's side. But having seen how the army is in Kashmir, especially in terms of this whole idea that Kashmiris are painted as communal and this being a Hindu-Muslim issue, there is no the Indian army is not just a military force. It's a very, very moral force. It knows exactly what it's fighting in Kashmir, and that's the reason why they've been there for such a long time now.
Thank you, Shiv. So to add on to what Shiv said, let's look at a very broader perspective. I come from, my native is Dindikal, from Tamil Nadu. My first posting was in line of control in Poonch, and I served with one of our RR regiment. I've been there. Sir is from a different part of the country, so each and every soldier. Soldiers doesn't come from the sky. They are part of our family. They are one among us. They are deputed for a certain operation on a certain duty. It may be peacekeeping. It may be rescuing a child from a borewell, or it may be fighting terrorists at the border. This executive order is given by the government of the day. The armies or the tri-forces are the professional organizations which go and execute it. And in the consequence of the execution, there are certain places where it may go here and there. As Shiv said, it's always cannot be black and white. And we always should see the denominator when we accuse some person, the percentage error or the percentage so-called human rights violations of force which has been deployed since 1990, 30 plus years of counterterrorism operation. Name any force in the world, the US forces in Syria, Iraq, the number of killings, and what happened in Kashmir. A lot of soldiers have laid down their lives because I don't want to reveal the name because it has to come out as a book at some point of time. There are good amount of soldiers who had lost their lives right in front of my eyes because they wanted to save, so-called avoid the collateral damage. Now, to Manik sir, one more question to you. We have seen certain movies, the war stories, which used to come earlier, I would say some 10 years before. We saw Dil Se, one of the most popular movie, where there was an army excess, and then the lead female character becomes a terrorist. And somewhere in the end of the movie, it is kind of being justified. Some form of she becoming a terrorist is getting justified. And the peak of it, what I saw, like I think when you were a major and I was a lieutenant at that time, was a movie called Shaurya. That completely changed the perspective because that's the first possibly a Hindi war movie I have seen. I had a shock of my life because I just landed up in my unit and I happened to see this movie. And there's two movies, Dil Se, most of you would have seen, but the other movie I'm referring to, you can just, I don't want you to actually go see the movie and reignite it, but please do read the story as such. Was that the peak of demonizing the forces, or is it like, is there a new low after that movie?
Okay, one thing I'm at loss. I've not seen either of the movies.
Okay.
Right?
I think Shiv, I think
But,
Shiv
but I've seen the very famous clip from Shaurya, which you all should see. Actually, it's a courtroom scene in a military court. But one thing I'd like to just add on to what Shiv was saying about being moral. See, we don't grade what we are doing in Kashmir as war. We never say, like he said, we call it peacetime awards. There's no difference in the way, like bullets don't move slow just because it's peacetime, right? So people are fighting. We are a country that is losing soldiers every day. It has become so common that he's been covering defense from 2 decades now. That he would agree with me. Now it becomes just a mention in the newspaper or just, 5 more died. That's it, right? If it was any other country, there would be a lot of hue and cry about. But we have just normalized it so much because, expendables, soldiers are expendable. They're fighting somewhere. Rest of the country is still fighting. I can tell you if we lose soldiers and a Bollywood actress does something controversial, she will get more media today. It's a fact. The soldiers are so down, so last in the, priority list for, country. And it's nobody's mistake. It's only government and, we have failed to secure the position that they deserve. And it's mainly because also that I would like on that moral thing that when army operates in Kashmir, we are not like US forcing operating in Vietnam. Nobody has bombed. Nobody has done napalm bombing. We have never bombed artillery into our own forces or on our own people. We don't even use air force. So if it's a house which has a terrorist hold up, you're not allowed to just burn it down or throw a bomb. Yeah? You have to go soldier by soldier, one by in, and try and kill them, in which you also lose men. And the government and the army both know that. There is no other way to do it. You have to go in one by one. It's a very tedious, risk-taking, and many a times fatal operation. But we fight with our both hands tied behind our backs. That's the morality level of that is inculcated in Indian armed forces, and it comes straight from Ramayana, Mahabharata, and our ideology and our culture. But I would again say we need to revive that. We need to, like, again, I go back to Shivaji. He's the guy who understood. Had he not prepared, Afzal Khan would have killed him. But he knew how to fight the man, and he took his bagnak with him. Just coming back to the movie, I've not seen the
Okay,
both of them. So
I think Shiv, you can take on that question. I think you got the context of what the movie specifies.
Look, I have a slightly contrarian view as far as films are concerned. But my view is that, look, the Indian film industry gets a lot of flack, which is fair in my view. But let's never forget that the Indian film industry, Bollywood, whatever you want to call it, is a very, very, very important part of India's soft power.
Yeah.
Okay. We can sit here and crib about the movies, and believe me, I'm completely with you as far as how the military is depicted. Whether it is Shaurya, they'll say any other movie, it grates for me as well. But that's okay. I mean, I think it's okay to have judge a movie on issues of taste and accuracy and things like that. And I think it's totally warranted and natural, especially for military personnel, to watch the quality of movies and think, oh my God, why can't they get this right? This doesn't happen in the movie. You're absolutely right. We don't sing when we're at war, and all those things I think are issues of taste, issues of that sort of thing. I think there are some fine examples of how the military has been depicted in movies. It is going to be a very tall order, in my view, to have a pure war movie in this country
we need
without the songs and dances and emotions and romance and stuff. It's going to be very difficult. Like, for example, I'll take a small example of a war movie that is very little war and mostly like relationship romance. But I happen to think it's a fabulous movie which actually depicts the movie in beautiful light, and that is Lakshya. Okay, with Hrithik Roshan. Total pop, romance, Farhan Akhtar type movie. Nothing serious about it. But that movie had a real effect on me. I was in college when I watched that movie, and that even though there was no part of me that ever wanted to get into the military for some reason, but when I watched that movie, and I remember being in a hall full of people who were so impressed by that movie, And 75% of that movie is not military stuff.
Yeah.
It's Hrithik Roshan in college and ragging and all sorts of rubbish. But the movie is a military movie, you know. And so I think it goes down to that. About it could be about taste, etc.
Yeah, but the level of masala, which the ad, of course, it has to be commercial. It has to earn money.
Look,
for
see,
them.
I'll tell see, the thing is, one has to be a little bit empathetic also to film producers and filmmakers, which is that a war movie or a military movie can't be wholly military, because ultimately a film has to be watched by
Okay,
millions
I'll
of
slightly
people.
put it to a yeah.
I have a quick point to that. I understand you can't, we don't show hardcore military ops, and I don't know, we don't want to show, or there's a lack of intent or capability. But let's say small things like when I had just joined Twitter in 2019, I had a stroke. I was hospitalized for almost a year. That is the time I started Twitter, right? So I had 200 followers, right? Nobody. So Sam Manekshaw first poster came out 2020, and they had his dress wrong, As a Gorkha officer, he was wearing golden badges. So when I wrote a comment on that, obviously I hardly had any followers and I was nobody for them. They corrected it after a while. But this is my point. You're making movie on a field marshal, one of the legends of Indian military. You can't get his dress right. And recently, now that I had a lot of followers, Akshay Kumar was making a movie on Gorkha. I'm from Gorkha Regiment. I was commissioned into it. And he had a soldier and a kukri, like a angry-looking young man kind of thing. So they got the kukri wrong. They showed the sword. Kukri is the identity of Gorkha soldier. I have it tattooed here, So it is, and you got a kukri wrong. It is. So I wrote that, dear Mr. Akshay Kumar, thanks for making movie, but your kukri is wrong. It's a sword. He replied to that, yeah, thank you, Major. We'll change it and all that. The movie didn't come out. That they had some problem with the army headquarters. But what I'm trying to say is, they can get basics wrong. In Hollywood movies, I watch a lot of them. It's not about snobbery. I just like how they make war movies, right? Even if it's a romance movie and the soldier is the hero, and they show him coming down from a helicopter, jumping and running towards his girlfriend and all that. It's a 5-second clip, but you pause that scene and watch where the guns, where the soldier, where the guard, the uniform, the collar tabs, everything will be the way it will be on a military base. That is the detailing. That is why they are Hollywood, and we are great, but
I completely agree with Major Jolly when he says that if filmmakers decide to make films about the military, they have to understand that you can't take liberty with certain things. You can't mess up uniforms. You can't mess up regimental insignias. You can't mess up, certainly you can't mess up names, the way the military does things, because, as civilians, we have to understand that military culture is a completely different kind of civilizational, thought. Accuracy, regimentation, not getting those small things wrong is part of how they function. So when they see outsiders just having their way with, acha chalo, if you don't have the Gorkha insignia, just put something else. You don't have a kukri, just use a sword. For the Gorkha regiment, taking away the kukri and putting a sword is like probably going up to the colonel commandant and slapping him. It's sacrilege. It's like slapping that person's parent. It's unacceptable. So I completely agree with you. If you're going to delve into making military movies, the least that you owe to your audiences and to the military is depiction of accuracy. Just one small addition to this. One of the reasons why American films and military films have always had default accuracy as far as the military is concerned is because post-Vietnam, the American military had already realized the benefits of engaging with Hollywood and media. They saw Hollywood as a fabulous, game-changing sort of propaganda platform, which is why whether it's the US Navy or the Marine Corps or the US Army or the US Air Force, when Hollywood movies are made, they provide real assets. They provide active consultancy. Unlike the Indian military, which has only now started to do it.
Yeah.
The Indian military was suspicious of filmmakers. They didn't like people coming into their academies and shooting their regiments and their bases. They hated that. Even now, it's like a pretty strict process to get permission to shoot or film at bases. But all I'm saying is in the US, whether it's like a bubblegum romance or whatever it is, the military was, yeah, sure, please come in and we'll tell you exactly how to do. We'll give you the uniforms, we'll give you the helicopters, we'll have consultants on board. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
And with Amaran, for instance, I can assure you that there will be no inaccuracies because me and my co-author are on board, and we will make sure there are no errors as far as the military is concerned.
Thanks, Shiv. So to add on to what Shiv has said, ADGPA is an institution of Army which kind of controls all this media. Anybody who would want to do a movie or a OTT, they go and apply. And a week before when I spoke to somebody in ADGPA, they said 28 movies are currently in pipeline. So we see a major surge, I think, in the past 2-3 years. So I think post-COVID, we are seeing a major surge. Yeah, of course, we understand that it cannot be completely the way we see things, be it the uniform or be it the mannerism or the kind of dialogue they deliver. But certain movies have been purely meant for propaganda. I would say, for example, Salman Khan's movie. I have not watched the movie, with a disclaimer. I don't watch his movies. But there was a movie where he is a RNAW agent, raw agent. And then his girlfriend, she is an ISI agent. And then he addresses to his teammates, his fellow raw officials, Aapki bhabhi kaise hain, bhabhi. And there's so much of romancing. And then the Indian raw agent and the Pakistani ISI agent go together and do some rescue in Syria. And
Tiger Zinda hai.
Tiger Zinda hai. I really got angry. I haven't seen that movie. I heard the storyline. I will not do the mistake of reading that. Why? Because exactly a week before, in my own YouTube channel, I took a month's time to read about Ravinder Kaushik, who's the actual tiger. If anybody wants to know what guts mean, what sacrifice mean, do go and read his history. Ravinder Kaushik was named tiger by none other than then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Yeah, one of the legend. His story, you can add masala, but there is a limit to add masala, and what kind of masala do you add? But and surprisingly, I think so that movie was a hit. Huge hit. Now, if I want to go back to those kids or the younger generation who has seen those movies, even the elders, I would say, no. Ravinder Kaushik was not this. He was something else. We have to make five more movies. Your views on it, sir?
So I'd say on this, same thing. Charity begins at home. If you have I don't have kids. I have a niece who's now growing up. She's 4 years old, right? So if I tell her whole day you keep making TikToks and I clap and go watch another movie and see Tiger Zinda Hai or Alive or Dead, go check it out. I can't blame anybody else for not making sure that she doesn't know who Maharana Pratap was. If you are in your house, and that is the aspect of war storytelling I was telling you. Don't we can't. It's not a binary situation where either you know everything about history or you are only Tiger Zinda Hai quality. It has to be somewhere where we can tell our children, just remember there was a Maharana Pratap. Just remember there was a Shivaji. As you grow up, learn more about him. When you have to give anecdotes, when you have to give examples, when you have to give names, quote these names. So you want to learn character, learn from Karan or Arjun or Sri Ram or whatever. We have this is so I don't know much about movies, but this is the aspect of war storytelling. If you want to teach somebody, I can tell you it can be a 3 to 4 hour session. If you just start talking about Abhimanyu and Chakravyuh, right? It'll bring tears to your eyes if you read about how he was killed and that aspect of it. I still get goosebumps when I think of it, right? Phenomenal story. But that we always sit on, there are a lot of panels I speak, there are a lot of places we speak, we always have this, society has this, country has this, nation has all this. Just go and check what is in our homes actually. That'll be more than enough. So as far as this simplification of a raw agent falling in love with ISI agent, I think it's one, Bollywood is just riding the nationalist wave right now. The OTT and Bollywood both are understanding there's BJP aa gaya hai aur nationalist wave chal raha hai. बनाओ मूवी पे मूवी.
Write down it.
Yeah, चलेगा. ये भी this will work. This will work. You know, कोई तो चलेगा. It is like that. Doesn't matter. There's a very famous picture, Shiv, you would have seen. There's a lady officer who's wearing military corps epaulets and para commando and this and that.
Everything is.
Yeah, and every soldier is confused. Who is she?
Which regiment is she?
Who is she? You know. So that's the thing. Bollywood is just making most of the vibe. That's a, you know.
Thank you, sir. And every good thing has to come to end. Two short questions from the audience. 2 questions. Time is up.
So, the US Army
Question
Chief's
two?
office has
Question 2.
to either to all, actually all three.
Okay.
Perhaps more to towards the Shiv. So the US Army Chief's office has a professional reading list that they come out with, I think, almost every year. And these are a very diverse set of books from, you know, ancient Greek wars to modern information warfare. 2 questions here. The first one is that, are you aware of whether the Indian armed forces have anything similar? And if not, would you be willing to put together a list and maybe share it on your Twitter channel?
The Indian armed forces do have reading lists, by the way. As far as their progressive courses and stuff, they do have reading lists for sure. It's a good question because nobody's actually ever seen these lists. But these are lists that are part of the periodical courses that officers go through. Yeah, in academies, exactly. I personally would love to put together a list, but I don't think I would ever put myself in a position where I think I have the kind of wisdom and scope to advise officers. I'm a ordinary civilian. Officers who go into these courses are learning not just about tactics and things, but strategy and warcraft and things like that, which is way beyond anything I could advise them about. So honored that you think I could do that, but no.
So we have so the moment we join academy, every term you have to read 1 book. These books are prescribed by RTRAC, the Army Training Command. And as we keep progressing, it is also when you join unit, one of the first tasks you get is your boss will tell you, and it's like a culture that you write a book review every 3 months. And in our promotion exams, there is a major campaign. Let's say you will do, an in India Maratha campaign or outside Battle of Somme or something like that. And one general that you have to study about to pass that exam. We even study Nazi generals and all, because it's purely from a military perspective. So there is no centralized list, but the training command has put down generals and campaigns that we go through in our lifetime to, understand more about it.
One last question.
Hello. I always expected the army and I get goosebumps. I always wanted to be part of the army and expect the army people a lot. Can there be anything which I can do? I always wanted to be part of the army and expect the people a lot. I want to contribute something to the army people.
He wants to contribute to the army in any way that is possible.
I got that.
He wants to contribute to the army in any way that is possible. He has an immense respect for the army. Yeah.
We
I always get inspired by the army people.
He is always inspired by the work that people do in the armed forces, and
I will definitely talk to you after this. Whatever you are doing, I will talk to. There's OTA in Chennai. There are NCC nearby. There are a couple of. We'll definitely figure out something. Yeah.
I carry forward this commitment from my sir. We will soon have you in one of official military event. I commit you this on behalf of Major Sir. And Shiv, your perspective.
The military, like our society, has changed amazingly over the last 20 years, and I'm personally witness to that. And I think the military has been extremely open. I am actually a sort of living example of how the military has changed. The military hates giving journalists access to official records and war reports and military operations reports, but they completely opened their doors to me. And I have spent my entire career writing negative stories about the army, but they trusted me with that. So absolutely, anything you think you can do for the military will listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much. I hope this session gave you something, and we also took something from here. And one thing which, as a forum, I would like to tell the journalists out here, there is a course which has been initiated by the Government of India. It's called Defense Correspondence Course. It's a 1 month course, right? It's a, I think, 1 or 2 months course. Tamil Nadu gets 3 vacancy. Each state gets 3 vacancy. One of you can, who are interested, I can be the messenger to pass it on to them. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this wonderful insight into the war stories. And we feel really privileged to hear from the first-hand source on the war stories. May I now request Sri Srinath ji to honor Major Madan and Dr. Ujjwala to honor Major Manik. Sri Srinath ji honoring Major Madan. Dr. Ujjwala to honor Major Manik Joli. And I request Dr. Shanti Shri Pandit ji to honor Shiv Arur. Ma'am, please come to the center of the dais. Srinath ji.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just taking one moment to acknowledge the presence of Sri Kalyan Raman ji, who has come and graced this occasion. He is Prabhari of Intellectual Wing, BJP State Party. Sir, welcome, sir. We are very happy to have you here, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a good number of interesting sessions post-lunch. And at sharp 2, we have a session curated by Shefali Vaidya,